Have you ever been in a meeting where someone is just talking for 20 minutes, generating thousands of words, but saying absolutely nothing?
Oh, yeah. Like, constantly. It is the worst.
Right. Well, today we aren't just memorizing vocabulary to describe that. We're mastering the actual mechanics of evasion, confrontation, and sudden shocks. So welcome back to Superbly Said Advanced English Vocabulary and Phrases.
And today's source material actually comes from a SpeakDuo lesson. So if you want to put these phrases into practice, you can go to speakduo.com to meet new people from around the world who are practicing English on video calls to become more confident with their English speaking abilities.
Exactly. And listen, today's deep dive is specifically for you advanced English learners out there who are, really ready to master true nuance.
Yeah, we're skipping the basic fluff completely.
Totally. We have 15 highly specific advanced phrases, and we are going to break down exactly how and why they operate in the real world.
Because, at an advanced level, it's no longer just about knowing what a word means. It's about understanding the historical mechanics of the phrase, why native speakers choose it over a simpler word, and the subtle psychology behind it.
Right, so let's unpack this. We're going to start with how we communicate information, specifically how we reveal it, hide it, or, fight over it.
Oh, the fun stuff.
Always. So our first phrase is to peel back the curtain, which means to reveal hidden details or inner workings.
Right, and to understand the nuance here, you really have to look at the phrase's origin. It's rooted in the theater or even something like The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, like pulling back the literal curtain to see the wizard working the machine.
Exactly. You aren't just explaining a concept, you are pulling back a physical barrier to expose the backstage. Like if you merely explain something, the subject matter is, well, it's neutral.
Sure.
But when you peel back the curtain, you are revealing something that was deliberately hidden from the public eye.
Right, so it implies this kind of exclusivity. So in a workplace context, you wouldn't just say your colleague explain the hiring process if that process is, notoriously secretive.
No, definitely not.
You'd say they peeled back the curtain on the hiring process, which gave you insider knowledge. Or think about an IELTS Part 2 speaking response.
Oh, that's a great application.
Yeah, if you're asked to describe a film, you could talk about a documentary that successfully peeled back the curtain on how a massive music festival is organized.
Because it immediately gives your English that sense of drama. It basically tells the listener, hey, I am about to show you something secret.
Exactly. But what if someone is doing the exact opposite? Like, what if they are actively hiding the truth?
Well, that brings us to our second phrase, to beat about the bush, which means to avoid getting directly to the main point.
And people do this all the time. But the origin of this one is wild, right?
It really is fascinating. It comes from old hunting practices. So hunters would hire people to literally beat the bushes with sticks to scare the birds out into the open. Okay.
But if you were afraid of what might be in the bush, like a boar or a snake, you wouldn't hit the bush itself. You would cautiously beat around or about the bush, making noise, but avoiding the actual target.
Wow, that perfectly explains the nuance. So it's not just the same as delaying.
No, not at all.
Because, if you are delaying, you might just be pausing or sitting in silence. But beating about the bush is active evasion. You are generating words, making noise, but deliberately circling the topic defensively.
Exactly. You are avoiding the snake in the bush.
I've definitely been in conversations where I've had to tell my boss, stop beating about the bush and tell me what you really think about the marketing plan.
Oh, for sure. Because it's frustrating. The person is talking, but dodging the actual decision.
Right. And when that evasion becomes too much, that frustration usually boils over into our third phrase, to have it out, which means to have a direct argument to resolve an issue.
Yes, to have it out. Okay, let me challenge you on this one, though. Does having it out always mean, like, a screening match? Like throwing plates across the kitchen?
Yeah.
Because that sounds highly unprofessional.
No, that's a very common misconception. But no, it absolutely does not mean a screaming match.
Oh, okay.
The core nuance here is confrontation with the specific goal of final resolution. You can contrast this with simply, discussing an issue.
Because a discussion can go on forever.
Exactly. It can go on for months with no end in sight. Having it out is a calculated confrontation to basically end a Cold War.
So it's really about the finality of the confrontation.
Precisely. The source material gives a great workplace example. Two colleagues who've been passively sending each other aggressive emails all week finally agree to have it out in a calm meeting room.
They just sit down and deal with it.
Right. They confront the friction directly, lay all their cards on the table, and it ends with a clearer task division plan. No screaming required, just direct, final honesty.
That makes perfect sense. Now, once the truth is out there, once you've peeled back the curtain or had it out, it often forces sudden, massive shifts in our lives.
Right, the fallout.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we describe the impact of those unexpected events? Let's look at blindsided by life. This means being caught completely off guard by a major event.
And to really grasp the weight of this phrase, you have to think about its origins in sports, specifically American football.
Oh, like a quarterback getting hit.
Exactly. A quarterback is looking down the field, and a defender hits them from their blind side, the side they physically cannot see. So the alternative comparison here is just being surprised.
But surprised feels so mild compared to that.
Because it is. Blindsided carries so much more violence and weight. A surprise party is a surprise. Being blindsided is a heavy, life-altering shock where you had zero preparation.
It's the severity that matters. Like, it's a family emergency suddenly forcing you to cancel a massive trip, or having your long-term career plans change literally overnight because your department was dissolved.
Yeah, you didn't just not see it coming. It hit you from the side while you were looking straight ahead.
Oof. And when you get hit that hard, sometimes a foundational idea or a situation will turn on its head. This means to completely reverse or challenge a concept or an assumption.
And this is way stronger than just changing your mind, right?
Oh, totally. It is a full 180-degree flip. Imagine a pyramid resting on its wide base. If you turn it on its head, it is now balancing precariously on its tip.
Wow, yeah.
You aren't just adjusting an opinion. The very foundation of what you thought was true has been inverted. The floor is now the ceiling.
So if you're in an IELTS speaking exam, you could talk about how a specific trip turned your view on its head regarding what makes a culture welcoming.
Exactly. Or in a business context, you could mention a groundbreaking workplace study that completely turned a long-held economic assumption on its head.
Right. And those massive foundational shifts, they don't just fade away instantly. They leave what we call the long tail of something, meaning the extended, lingering consequences of a past event.
The visual for this one is so helpful. I don't just picture results. I actually picture a massive animal, like a dragon.
Okay, dragon, I like it.
Right. So the dragon itself, the main event, has already walked past you and is gone. But you are still standing there watching this physical, heavy tail dragging far behind it in the dirt.
That is a brilliant visualization. In statistics and business, the long tail refers to a graph where the main spike drops off, but a thin line of data stretches out indefinitely.
Like a literal tail.
Yes. So if we compare this to just saying the results of, the nuance you are capturing with the long tail of is the stretch of time. These are secondary effects that are felt months or even years later.
Like dealing with the long tail of budget cuts from 2 years ago. The cuts happened in 2024. But in 2026, you're still dealing with a long tail of deferred maintenance on your software.
Exactly. Now, those lingering consequences often push us into periods where we really don't know what we're doing.
Which perfectly transitions to our next phrase, to fly completely blind, which means to navigate a situation without necessary guidance or clear information.
And if you are an advanced learner, you really need to understand how this differs from being unprepared.
Wait, I actually need to push back on this a little bit.
Yeah.
Flying blind and being unprepared sound exactly the same to me. Like if I don't study for my university finals, aren't I flying blind into the exam?
Well, not quite. If you are unprepared, that implies a personal failure or a lack of effort on your part. You could have studied, you should have studied, but you didn't.
Okay, that's fair.
To fly completely blind comes from early aviation, when pilots flew into thick fog without modern instruments. You could be the best, most prepared pilot in the world, but without visibility, you are flying blind.
Oh, I see.
It's an environmental condition, a complete lack of available data, not a personal failure.
Oh, that is such a crucial distinction. So it's like starting a brand new software rollout or working in the very early startup phase of a company before any user reports or feedback actually exist.
Right. You aren't unprepared. The data just isn't there yet. You are flying completely blind until the fog clears.
Exactly. And this raises an important question. What happens when we struggle during those blind periods? We have two distinct phrases for this that learners constantly mix up. A dry spell versus a rough patch.
Yeah, let's put them head to head. How do you choose between them?
Well, what's fascinating here is it really comes down to the psychological difference of what you're experiencing. Let's take a dry spell first. Think of a literal drought where there is no rain.
Okay.
A dry spell is a continuous period with no success or progress. The key nuance is the absence of something good.
Ah, so like a lack of job offers leading you to eventually take up freelancing? Or a novelist experiencing a creative dry spell where they just can't produce any good work. The good thing, jobs, creativity, it's missing.
Precisely. Now, compare that to a rough patch. This is a difficult or highly challenging period. The nuance here is the presence of something bad or stressful.
Okay, so it's not that nothing is happening, it's that bad things are actively happening.
Exactly. Like going through a rough patch at the office because two key team members quit at the exact same time, the servers crashed, and you had to work weekends. That is the active presence of stress.
Absence of good versus presence of bad. That is so helpful. Which brings us to the emotional aftermath. How do we emotionally handle those rough patches and dry spells?
Well, we might end up having to walk with a limp. This means to live with a lasting emotional effect or damage from a past event.
And this is so much more evocative than just saying someone is sad or, traumatized.
Yeah, I like to think about this as a structural mechanism. It's like driving a car after a minor accident. The engine works, you're still driving down the highway at full speed, but the alignment is fundamentally off and the steering wheel keeps pulling to the left.
You're overcompensating.
Right. You are functioning, but you are actively compensating for damage.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. The nuance of walking with a limp is that you are continuing to move forward. You haven't stopped, but you are visibly altered.
Yeah, think about a small team struggling for months to rebuild their dynamic after a toxic manager finally leaves. They're still coming to work, they're hitting their targets, but they walk with a limp. The trust is still misaligned.
And sometimes, instead of just dealing with that lingering pain, we have to actively choose to marinate in discomfort, meaning to intentionally sit with difficult feelings or challenges in order to learn from them.
This is entirely different from just enduring something, right?
Oh, absolutely. Enduring is passive. You are just surviving until it's over. The nuance of marinating is the intentionality. Think of literal culinary marination.
Right, you soak meat in this intense, highly acidic liquid, specifically so it absorbs the flavor and breaks down the tough fibers. So when you marinate in discomfort, you are intentionally soaking in the awkwardness to absorb the skill.
Exactly. You are choosing to stay in that uncomfortable state, like standing on stage and giving a presentation in a new language. You know you're making grammatical mistakes, you know your accent isn't perfect, and it feels deeply awkward.
Just terrible.
Yeah, but you don't run away. You choose to marinate in that discomfort because it is literally the only way to get better.
But, if you lack that careful, intentional finesse, you might end up being heavy-handed, which means dealing with a situation in an overly forceful or insensitive way.
Right, and you have to contrast this with simply being strict, because a strict teacher has clear rules and enforces them. A heavy-handed teacher causes collateral damage.
Where does that one come from?
The origin actually points to drawing or painting. If you are heavy-handed with your pencil, you push too hard, you lack subtlety, and you rip the paper.
Oh, it's clumsiness that causes damage. Like a manager whose heavy-handed performance reviews were so aggressively critical that they made the entire team terrified to ever ask questions again. They ruined the canvas.
Exactly. So let's pivot from these internal feelings back to external actions. How do we maneuver socially? If you want to get into a group, you might need to wheedle one's way into it, meaning to cleverly persuade people to accept you or gain access.
This is far more strategic than just saying you want to join a club.
Yeah, the nuance is the sly, clever, and often flattering persistence used to get your foot in the door. You are basically sliding in sideways.
Like offering to organize all the notes and bring expensive snacks every week just so you can wheedle your way into an exclusive university study group. Or offering your highly specialized technical skills for free to wheedle your way into a prestigious volunteer team.
And once you've wheedled your way in, you might need to ham it up, to intentionally overact or exaggerate emotions to be funny or get attention.
It's not just joking around, is it?
No, not really. The nuance here is theatricality. It comes from the old theater term ham actor, which is someone who overperforms. It's physical, exaggerated comedy.
So like overacting during a charity speech to keep the crowd laughing, or using wild hand gestures and highly exaggerated silly voices to relax a group of nervous new employees.
Exactly. And finally, speaking of the theater, we have our last phrase, to put on its feet. To physically test out a script, idea, or plan in a practical setting.
The comparison here is to simply testing something. But putting something on its feet carries the nuance of bringing an idea off the flat paper and into the physical three-dimensional world.
Right. In theater, actors sit around a table reading a script first. When the director says, let's put it on its feet, they literally stand up and see if the movements actually work in real space.
Like running a pilot workshop for a corporate training program, or testing a brand new lesson plan by putting it on its feet in a live trial class to see how the students actually react to the material in real time.
So we've covered the origins, the comparisons, and the deep nuances of 15 advanced phrases.
Which means it is time for the superbly said quiz. Let's test your retention.
Okay, here's how this will work. We will read a question with option A, option B, and option C. Your job is to spot the correct idiomatic usage. We'll give you a brief beat to pause if you need to lock in your answer before we reveal it. And notice how we've designed these. Some options are literal traps, testing if you truly understand the figurative nuance.
Okay, let's jump right in. Question 1. Which sentence uses the idiomatic phrase peel back the curtain correctly based on context? Option A. The professional interior design window treatment specialist was instructed to peel back the curtain during the living room installation. Option B. The deeply frustrated young retail clerk aggressively managed to completely drop a white line. Option C. The investigative journalism piece successfully peeled back the curtain on the secretive lobbying practices within the government.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer. All right, the correct answer is option C. Peel back the curtain. Remember, peel back the curtain is the figurative revelation of secrets. Option A is a literal trap. Peel back the curtain is like our earlier example of a documentary exposing a festival or looking at a secretive hiring process.
Nice. Question 2. Select the context where the phrase beat about the bush is most appropriately used figuratively. Option A. Instead of directly stating that the budget proposal was rejected, the director continued to beat about the bush for 20 minutes. Option B. The professional landscape garden yard maintenance worker was instructed to beat about the bush during the hedge trimming. Option C. The incredibly clumsy warehouse inventory clerk accidentally managed to quickly buy some large systems.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need a moment. The answer is option A. Beat about the bush. To beat about the bush means avoiding the main point defensively while actively talking. When you beat about the bush, you are generating words to dodge the truth, just like that 20-minute meeting delay example we talked about earlier.
Okay, moving on. Question 3. In which situation does someone accurately utilize the advanced phrase turn on its head contextually? Option A. The professional orthopedic neurology clinical surgeon was instructed to turn on its head during the physical posture exam. Option B. The groundbreaking empirical study completely turned conventional economic theory on its head by proving that inflation decreases with higher spending. Option C. The completely terrified young wilderness traveler unexpectedly noticed an exceptionally massive, heavy tool chest.
Go ahead and pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer. The correct answer is option B. Turn on its head. To turn on its head is a total 180-degree reversal of a foundational concept. When you turn on its head an assumption, it's a complete reversal, like how travel changes your view of welcoming cities.
Question 4. Which response best demonstrates the advanced phrase, marinate in discomfort figuratively? Option A. Rather than immediately seeking distractions from failure, she chose to marinate in discomfort and reflect honestly on her strategic mistakes. Option B. The professional culinary kitchen barbecue chef was instructed to marinate in discomfort during the meat preparation shift. Option C. The incredibly clumsy warehouse inventory clerk accidentally managed to quickly catch that white balance.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer. The answer is option A. Marinate in discomfort. To marinate in discomfort means sitting with hard feelings intentionally. When you marinate in discomfort, you soak in it to absorb the lesson, just like practicing a new language even when you feel out of your depth.
Perfect. Question 5. How would a professional accurately use the phrase, fly completely blind, contextually? Option A. The professional aviation training instrument flight instructor was instructed to fly completely blind during the simulated pilot exam. Option B. The completely confused amateur theater group unexpectedly decided to proudly paint a clean frame. Option C. Without access to historical market data or consumer research, the startup's executive team was essentially flying completely blind.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about it. Option C is correct. Fly completely blind. To fly completely blind is navigating without any necessary guidance or data in your environment. When you fly completely blind, it is exactly like that startup phase before user feedback comes in.
Awesome. Question 6. Which scenario perfectly illustrates the meaning of the phrase heavy-handed contextually? Option A. The professional weightlifting athletic strength trainer was instructed to be heavy-handed during the barbell bench press spot. Option B. The administration's heavy-handed disciplinary policy alienated the entire student body instead of resolving the minor conduct issue. Option C. The incredibly clumsy hotel maintenance worker accidentally managed to completely drop that red tray.
Pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer. The answer is option B, heavy-handed. Being heavy-handed means acting in an overly forceful and insensitive way that causes collateral damage. A heavy-handed approach rips the canvas, just like the coach demotivating his players or a bad manager doing reviews.
We're almost there. Question 7. Which sentence accurately utilizes the advanced phrase, a dry spell, contextually? Option A. After months of experiencing a creative dry spell with no new client pitches accepted, the design agency finally secured a major contract. Option B. The professional agricultural farming irrigation specialist was instructed to monitor a dry spell during the desert weather study. Option C. The deeply confused young kitchen assistant accidentally managed to quickly slice a fresh piece of spell.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need a second. Option A is the correct answer, a dry spell. A dry spell is a continuous period of no success. Remember, a dry spell is the absence of something good, like the lack of job offers before freelancing.
And our final question. Question 8. Which of the following statements correctly uses put on its feet? Option A. We put the new workshop on its feet with a small pilot before opening it to the public. Option B. The professional podiatrist was instructed to put on its feet during the medical examination. Option C. The incredibly clumsy shoe salesman accidentally managed to drop a heavy box.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The correct answer is option A, put on its feet. To put on its feet means to test an idea in a practical physical setting. When you put on its feet a concept, you stand up and bring it to life in 3D space, like running a live trial class for a new lesson plan.
And that wraps up our quiz.
Huge congratulations on expanding your advanced English toolkit today. Mastering these nuances, moving beyond the basic vocabulary to actually understand the origins and mechanisms of the language, it takes real effort.
It absolutely does. We talked about marinating in discomfort when learning the language. But ask yourself, where else in your life are you rushing to escape discomfort? When you actually need to just sit in it, have it out with your own fears, and let it turn your perspective on its head.
That is a brilliant, provocative question to leave you with. Keep practicing, keep stepping into the unknown, and we'll catch you next time.